Hi, I'm Lisa Rubel from Love to Color My World, and I'm here to talk to you about patterns for 10-inch pre-cut squares. We're going to talk about the Crazy 4 patch, which if you haven't tried any improv piecing, this is a great way to kind of dip your toes in the water. And this is a free pattern that you can download with the purchase of a pack of 10-inch squares from Sit and Sew Fabrics. So you can head over to their website and pick out the one that you like and make the quilt along with me. On the website you'll also find a variety of different pre-cut shapes, hexagons, squares, strips, that type of thing, as well as pre-cut kits where all the pieces for the quilt are already cut and all you need to do is start sewing and put it together. So let's get started on making the Crazy 4 patch quilt. So I've got this variety of 10-inch squares here, and you're going to use 2 squares for a block, and you want to choose 2 fabrics that have a fair amount of contrast. So I'm going to go with this multicolored floral and then this teal print. Move the other ones out of the way. So the first thing we're going to do is line up those 2 squares on top of each other. And then we're going to put 2 cuts in it because we're going to be making a 4 patch. So there'll be 2 of this teal print and there will be 2 of the floral print, but it's going to be a crazy 4 patch, a wonky 4 patch with the angles a little bit different. And this is how we're going to do it. So you're going to, you put your ruler on it. You want to be somewhere in the middle third, but we don't need to measure, just kind of eyeball that you're in the middle third of the square. And then you want to angle the ruler. You want to angle it more than a ½ inch or so because then you can tell that you're trying to be wonky on purpose and not just that you sewed a little bit crookedly. And then hold your ruler down, cut through both squares, and then don't move them, just leave them like they are, and we're going to turn the ruler and do the same thing in the other direction. So again, you want to be in the middle third of the square, and you can choose if you want to angle it in this direction or in that direction. And for each set of blocks that you make, you want to do it differently so that you've got some variety in your blocks. So choose your angle. I'm going to go right here and cut. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull away 2 of these but leave them in place, and you can see this is what my block will end up looking like when I'm done. So all we need to do now is sew the pieces together. And to do that, I'm going to take the top 2 pieces. So I'll move this out of the way. Take the top 2 pieces and align the raw edges. Make sure that, as you pick them up, you don't turn them. You want to make sure that you're aligning the 2 that go together when you lay them out. And align those raw edges. And then take them over to your sewing machine and stitch with a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, I've got my 2 pieces sewn together. Now I'm going to come over and press them. And similar to making a regular 4 patch, you want to press the seams of the top and bottom halves in opposite directions so that they nest when you put it together. And if you notice that your top and your bottom don't exactly line up because of your angle, don't worry about it. When we're done piecing the 4 patch together, we'll be trimming it down. So if it doesn't match up exactly, don't worry, that's not a problem. Okay, so I'm going to move this second piece out of the way, and I'm going to align these 2 pieces along their diagonal edge and sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance again. Now that I've got them sewn together, I'm going to press, and for both of mine, I pressed towards the teal fabric. Doesn't matter which way you press, as long as you press so that your seam allowances go in opposite directions for when we join them. So you can see I've got my 2 halves of the block here. I'm going to fold this over, and what you want to do is to find the point where you're a 1/4 inch down from the edge on that piece and a 1/4 inch down on that piece where your seams meet. So it's a little different than with a regular 4 patch. So you can see I've got the pin, it goes through both of my seams, at approximately that 1/4 inch mark, and that will help me get a nice join in the center. So then I'm going to sew all the way down this edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I've got that seam sewn. You can see I'll open up my piece, and then I'm going to press it open, just pressing the seam allowance to one side. There we go. You can see I got pretty close in the center, but what's nice, because these are wonky, even if your seams don't meet exactly, it's not really going to stand out because there's just a lot going on with your angled lines in here. So here's our 4-patch, our wonky 4-patch, and our next step is to trim it down to the size of our finished block. So we're going to trim the blocks to be 9 inches square, and you've got some flexibility here because you don't have to worry about having your squares be exactly the same size like you would in a regular 9-patch, because everything's a little wonky. So you want to set your ruler, your square ruler, down on top of your block, and just make sure that the 9-inch mark is on fabric all the way around, and that you can see a little bit of fabric around the edge. I like to do 2 sides at a time. So I trim those 2, and then when I flip it around, I can align the 9-inch mark on my ruler on my 2 cut lines and trim the other 2. And here is our finished block. Now I told you that we would get 2 blocks from each set of 2 squares that we cut. So we've got this block, and then we've got the alternate pieces from when we cut those 2 squares. And so these we would join in the same way, where we're going to sew these 2 together and sew these 2 together and then join in the middle, and you'll end up with 2 blocks. So you're going to work your way through your pack of 10-inch squares, finding 2 fabrics that have a lot of contrast between them, and making 2 blocks out of each set of 2 squares. You're going to make a total of 42 blocks, and then lay out the blocks into 7 rows of 6 blocks each, and sew those together to make your quilt top. And then you can layer it with backing and batting, baste it, quilt it however you'd like, add the binding, and your quilt is done. These blocks are a lot of fun to make because they don't require much measurement, and you get to play with a little bit of wonkiness, but there's still enough familiarity to your basic 4-patch blocks so that it's, you know, it's a nice transition into some improv piecing. And you get a really fun, whimsical looking quilt with blocks that have angles that go kind of every which way. So I hope you enjoy making the crazy 4-patch quilt and playing with all your different 10-inch squares. And if you need a pack of 10-inch squares, head over to Sit and Sew Fabrics website to find your favorite pack and get started sewing. And when you finish your quilt, we love to see it, so please share it with us on social media, either on Sit and Sew Fabrics Facebook page or tag Sit and Sew Fabrics on Instagram so that we can see what you made.